I'm Caroline Bennett, 29 years old, and somehow being hit by a speeding car hurt less than the way my family ignored me that night. I lay in the ICU with machines beeping around me, barely conscious, waiting for someone, anyone to walk through the hospital door. But they never did. When the nurse called to tell them I might not make it through the night, my mother's answer was, "We can't. Our other daughter is walking her dog." That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped pretending I was ever going to be enough for them. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. I grew up in a quiet town in Connecticut, in one of those picture-perfect neighborhoods where every house looked like it belonged on a postcard. My parents, Linda and Thomas Bennett, were well off. Mom was a top-selling real estate agent, and Dad had his own financial consulting firm. We never worried about money. Vacations every year, a backyard pool, fresh-cut hydrangeas lining the front porch, we had it all. From the outside, we were the kind of family people envied. But behind the trimmed hedges and smiling Christmas cards, the truth looked very different. My older sister Hannah had always been the center of their world. She wasn't especially gifted in school or sports, but she had a way of drawing attention to herself, and somehow she always got it. When she turned 25, my parents gave her a purebred husky she named Max. That dog cost more than my entire semester of college books. And from the moment he stepped into our home, it was like I disappeared completely. Max had gourmet meals cooked by a private pet chef, his own room in the house, and weekly visits to a canine spa. My parents treated it like something to be proud of. One day, while I was practicing for a college vocal recital, Hannah came into the room and said, "Max gets anxious when you sing." A few minutes later, my mother asked me to practice somewhere else so the dog wouldn't be upset. She wasn't joking. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan. My parents didn't make it to the ceremony. Max had a grooming appointment they couldn't miss. I remember standing alone under the stadium lights holding my diploma, watching other families cheer and pose for pictures. That night, my mom texted a photo of Max in a blue bandana. "He looks so handsome after his trim," she wrote. No mention of my degree. When I broke the school record in backstroke my senior year, my medals were packed away in a box and put in the attic. Max's picture with Santa got a spot on the mantel. I learned early on that no matter how hard I tried, it was never going to be enough. College was a struggle. Even though I landed a partial scholarship, my parents said they needed to be careful with expenses. That same week, they spent over $20 grand remodeling the basement into what they called Max's Recovery Lounge, complete with soft lighting, climate controls, and ambient dog music. When I came home over winter break, and Max shredded my entire marketing project, something I'd spent weeks preparing, I got scolded for leaving my things where he could get stressed. I rewrote it at a diner near campus. I still tried. I called. I invited them to holidays. I sent birthday cards. I told myself that maybe if I just worked hard enough, if I just achieved the next thing, they'd finally see me. That I'd be worthy of the kind of love they gave my sister and her dog, without question. Then came the chance of a lifetime, a final round presentation for a major promotion. Senior Marketing Director, double the salary. A position I had earned with nothing but hard work, long nights, and quiet perseverance. I invited my parents to attend the celebration dinner. My mother sounded excited. "Send us the details," she said. I believed her. But 4 days before the event, Hannah called a family meeting. Max, she claimed, was depressed. He needed family engagement therapy. The first session, Thursday night at 6, the exact time as my presentation. I reminded them gently, "I told you about this weeks ago." My father placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Sweetheart, Max is part of the family too." I went to the presentation alone. What happened after that changed everything. And the next thing I remember, was the sound of tires, screeching headlights rushing toward me, and a sudden blinding pain. I remember the way the rain tasted metallic cold. I was lying on the pavement, unable to move. There were voices all around me, some shouting, some crying, but I couldn't make sense of any of it. I could feel the pain in my leg and my ribs like fire spreading under my skin. I tried to lift my head, but the world tilted sideways. A woman's voice came close and steady. "Don't move. Help is on the way." And somewhere through the haze, a thought formed that stuck with me. Maybe this will finally make them care. The next time I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. The lights above me were too bright. There was a tube down my throat. Machines clicked and beeped to my right, and somewhere just outside the room I heard footsteps. A nurse came in. Her name tag said Andrea. She smiled and told me not to panic. They were helping me breathe. I had been unconscious for 2 days. Later, after the tube was removed and I could speak, the doctor came in and told me what happened. A car ran a red light. I was thrown nearly 10 feet. I had a punctured lung, a broken leg, fractured ribs, and a concussion. I had already been through 2 surgeries and would likely need another. He paused, then added that they had called my emergency contact the night I was brought in. I asked, "Did anyone come?" There was a silence before he answered. "No," he said gently. "We followed up several times." That night, I overheard 2 staff members talking in the hallway outside my room. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. She said they couldn't come, one of them whispered. Their other daughter was walking her dog and needed emotional support. The other person didn't respond right away. Then came, "She might not have made it through the night." I know the first voice said, "I've never seen anything like it." I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to that sentence repeat in my head. Walking the dog was more important. The days that followed blurred together. Painkillers kept me half awake. Andrea came in every morning with a kind smile and checked the visitor's log. Every morning it was still blank. She'd try to hide it, but I could see it on her face. No one was coming. Maya stopped by twice. She brought soft socks and a charger for my phone and sat with me while I cried quietly into the stiff hospital pillow. My inbox was full of messages from coworkers asking how I was doing, but not a word from my parents or Hannah. On the 3rd day, a woman from the hospital social work team came in, Jennifer. She asked gentle questions about my family situation. I didn't know what to tell her. I gave her the truth in pieces. She wrote things down on a clipboard and nodded slowly. "Is there anyone else we can reach out to for you?" she asked. "No," I said. And it hit me, as I said it out loud, there really wasn't. Later that afternoon, my fever spiked. They said it was an infection near the surgical site. They rushed me back into the operating room. That night, through the haze of pain and antibiotics, I dreamed my parents were standing by my bed. I dreamed my mother was crying, telling me they were sorry, that they had been wrong. I woke up shivering, and Andrea was sitting quietly by the window. "They didn't call, did they?" I asked her. She shook her head. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Hannah's name lit up the screen. I answered quickly, clumsy with the bandage on my hand. "Hannah." "Hey," she said. Her voice was bright. "Heard you got hit by a car or something. That sounds rough." "Yeah," I said. It was serious. She didn't acknowledge it. "Anyway, I wanted to tell you Max got these new calming toys. They're supposed to help with separation anxiety. They're kind of amazing. I posted a video. You should check it out when you're bored." She talked about Max for another 3 minutes. How he wasn't sleeping well, how she had tried new food combinations, how the specialist thought he might be picking up on stress from the family. When she said she had to go because it was time for Max's afternoon walk, I stared at the phone in disbelief. Not once did she ask how I was doing. After I hung up, something shifted in me. Something that had been quietly unraveling for years finally snapped free. The next morning, physical therapy began. A man named Brian came in with a walker and a determined look. I could barely sit up. Every step sent pain up my spine, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. You're pushing through more than most, he told me at one point. I have to, I said. Andrea sat with me on her lunch break that night. We talked more than usual. She told me a little about her own family, about walking away, about what it had cost her and what it had saved her from. Sometimes the best thing you can do, she said quietly, is to let go of people who keep hurting you. Her words stayed with me after she left. The following afternoon, just after breakfast, Andrea came in with a strange look on her face. "Your family is here," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear something behind it. All of them. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe I was still hoping some part of me. Then the door opened. There they were. My mother with a bunch of helium balloons shaped like dogs. No flowers, no card, just balloons that said, "Feel better, woof, soon." Hannah behind her, letting Max jump up onto the end of my hospital bed like it was his personal chaise lounge. My father hanging back, holding nothing. "You look better than we expected," he said. I looked at him for a long time. When exactly were you expecting to see how I looked? The room went quiet. "Well," my mother said quickly, "we're here now, and look who we brought." She motioned toward Max like he was a celebrity surprise. They stayed for about 30 minutes. They talked about Max's digestive issues, how hard the past week had been for him, how sensitive he'd become. Not once did they ask how I was sleeping, or if I was scared, or how the surgeries went. Then Hannah pulled out her phone and posed beside me. "Smile. Let's take one for Instagram. Everyone's been asking how Max is coping." My voice barely came out, but I asked, "Are you leaving already?" Mom looked at her watch. "We have to get Max to his grooming appointment. If we're late, they charge us extra." I sat still. Then I said it. "Get out." My father looked surprised. "Excuse me. Get out of my room. All of you." They tried to argue. Mom called me dramatic. Hannah said Max gave more love than I ever had. I told them the truth, that I'd spent my whole life trying to be enough, that I had begged for scraps of attention while they gave everything to her and the dog, and that I was done. They left. Max was the last to jump down, stepping on my injured leg on the way out. When the door finally closed behind them, I didn't move. I couldn't. But I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not peace, not yet, but the beginning of it. Andrea came in a few minutes later. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me and said, "Are you okay?" "No," I said. "But I think I'm going to be." That night, as the monitors beeped steadily beside me and the hallways outside quieted down, I made a decision. By morning, I had a plan. By sunrise, I knew I couldn't stay. Not in that hospital, not in that city, not in the same orbit as people who had proven beyond question what I meant to them. Andrea connected me with Jennifer again, the hospital social worker. She came in with a folder and a soft-spoken presence, sitting beside my bed like she had all the time in the world. She listened without judgment, then slid over a sheet of paper listing options support networks for estranged adults, short-term housing programs that helped patients transition out of care quietly. She looked me in the eye and said, "You wouldn't be the first person to start over." And then gently, "You won't be the last." The rest of the day passed in steady pieces. I made a call to my bank to confirm that I could move funds and access my accounts remotely. I emailed my landlord explaining my medical emergency and asking to break the lease early. I reached out to Rachel, my boss at Hartford Marketing, and left a short message asking if remote work might be possible during recovery. That evening, I asked Andrea for a pen and paper. She left me alone and closed the door behind her. I didn't write a letter to win them back. There wasn't a list of demands or anger spelled out in paragraphs. I just told the truth, clear, short, and final. I've spent my life waiting for you to love me the way you love Hannah and Max. I understand now that you never will. Don't try to find me. I deserve more. I'm going to go find it." The next morning, before the nurses changed shifts, Jennifer arranged for a private transport van. Dr. Chen, my attending physician, had been hesitant at first. "You still need monitoring," he said, scanning my chart. "You're healing, but it's not without risk." I asked, "And if the environment is harming more than the injuries?" He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded and said, "We'll make sure you're supported wherever you go." Andrea wheeled me through the back entrance. She had helped me dress clothes Maya had brought from my apartment. A quiet Boston neighborhood waited 3 hours away, where a landlord who'd been briefed on my condition was holding a small furnished studio. As I was helped into the van, Andrea pressed the folded note into my hand. "You're braver than you know," she said. I didn't feel brave, but I nodded. The ride was silent. Out the window, Connecticut faded behind bare trees and low stone walls. Each mile gave me something I hadn't expected: relief, not joy, not yet. Just the kind of quiet you notice after a long, loud storm. The apartment was smaller than I pictured. Just a bed, a second-hand couch, a narrow kitchenette. The walls were bare and there were scuff marks on the floor. But it was mine. The 2 attendants who helped with transport set my bag down gently, made sure I had access to what I needed, and then left without fuss. I sat on the edge of the bed, Walker beside me, and looked around the room. That first night I didn't unpack. I didn't cry. I just slept, hard and deep. The next morning I woke to silence. No machines, no hallway voices, no one telling me to be quiet so the dog wouldn't be upset. For the first time, the stillness belonged to me. Getting through the day took everything I had. Walking 10 feet to the bathroom felt like a mile. Toast burned in the small oven while I sat on the floor trying to put on socks. I moved like someone much older than 29, but each movement was mine. Each bruise, each scar mine too. By nightfall, I was so tired I almost called my parents. Almost. Instead, I picked up the phone and called Rachel. She answered right away. "Caroline," she said, "thank God. Your parents came by the office last week. They said you disappeared from the hospital." "Are you safe?" "I am," I said. I had to leave. I couldn't explain it then. I still can't. She was quiet for a second. "You don't have to explain. Maya told me enough." "Do you want to talk about work if possible? I'd like to work remote for now," I said, "just until I'm strong enough to come back." Rachel didn't hesitate. "The position is yours. The promotion was approved right after your presentation. Senior director, remote or not, you earned it." I closed my eyes and held the phone a little tighter. "Thank you. Just focus on healing," she said. "We've got everything else covered." That night, I ate canned soup on the couch and slept under a blanket I hadn't remembered packing. The days started to take on rhythm. Morning stretches, small meals, emails, and reports in the afternoon. At night, I searched online for groups people who had walked away from families like mine. I found a forum for estranged adults. The posts weren't loud. They were quiet, honest, familiar. A few days later, someone knocked on my door. I froze. Then I looked through the peephole and saw a woman holding a small green plant, curly red hair, warm smile. She called through the door, "Hi, I'm Charlotte, apartment 3B. The manager mentioned a new tenant recovering from surgery. Thought I'd drop by with a housewarming plant. It's a snake plant, impossible to kill." I opened the door slowly. "I'm Caroline," I said. "I don't have anything to offer except tap water." "Perfect," she said. "I brought my own cup." We sat in my tiny kitchen and talked for an hour. She didn't ask about the accident. She just told me about the building, the laundry room quirks, and where to find the best bread on Thursdays. Before she left, she said, "If you ever want company, I'm down the hall." That night, for the first time, I wrote in a blank notebook she'd tucked into the plant pot. Today I met someone who knocked and waited and smiled. 2 weeks later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a small bag of personal items I had left behind at the hospital: lotion, my hairbrush, the scarf Maya had brought. Tucked in with them was a handwritten note in Andrea's script. "Proud of you. Keep swimming." I sat down and cried. Not from pain, just from being seen. Bills came quickly after that. The rent was steep. Groceries stretched thinner than I'd expected. I rationed rice and beans, shopped at dollar stores, skipped takeout. But the lights stayed on. The Wi-Fi worked. I learned how to set up automatic payments. I'd never had to do that before. Each thing I figured out felt like one more piece of my life returning to my own hands. Thanksgiving came. I didn't have anyone to spend it with, but the forum I joined posted a link to a virtual gathering. "Orphans by choice," the caption said. We met online, lifted mugs of coffee or juice or wine. Everyone had a story. Everyone had left something behind. That night, I wrote again. I'm thankful for space. I'm thankful for silence. I'm thankful for a second chance. The cold set in by December. The walk to the corner store hurt my hips, and my legs stiffened in the night. But I was healing. Slowly. One afternoon, I managed to walk across the room without the walker, just leaning on a cane. I sat down, ordered a pizza, and celebrated with paper plates and a bottle of orange soda. Right as I was finishing the last slice, my work email pinged. The subject line, "Apollo misses you." It was from Hannah. I opened it. "Everyone thinks you're being selfish and dramatic. Mom cried at Christmas because you weren't there to take the family photo." I didn't reply. I just blocked the address and wrote one more sentence in the notebook beside me. Some doors don't need to be slammed, they just need to stay closed. By the time January rolled around, the Boston cold had settled deep into the sidewalks. My leg ached more in the mornings, and I started using the cane full-time again. Still, I made it 3 blocks each week to the community center on Elm Street. That's where I met the others, people like me, who had walked away from families that never quite learned how to love the right way. We sat in folding chairs in a circle under fluorescent lights. No one talked over each other. No one gave advice unless you asked for it. That first night, I listened more than I spoke. A woman named Tasha, a high school English teacher, with a calm voice and worn-out sneakers, said something I wrote down in my journal later that night. "Family is who shows up. Blood doesn't mean much if it makes you bleed every time you call home." I didn't say much that evening, but I went back the next week. And the week after that. I started wearing a real coat again, one I'd kept packed away for years because I didn't want to look too expensive around my sister. I started using my full name when I introduced myself to people. And little by little, I stopped checking social media for updates on what they were doing without me. One evening, walking back from Group Charlotte was waiting at the bottom of the stairs with 2 plastic bags of groceries. "Don't argue," she said, before I could say anything. "I bought too many bananas." We sat in my apartment with bowls of canned soup and day-old bread, laughing about the building's leaky roof and the neighbor upstairs who never seemed to sleep. I don't remember what made us laugh so hard that night, but I wrote it down the next morning. It's the first time in years I've laughed without feeling like I shouldn't. As the months went on, the apartment started to feel less temporary. The cane stayed near the door, but spent more time leaning against the wall than in my hand. I painted the walls a soft blue one Saturday with help from Charlotte and a guy named Will from down the hall who brought over an old radio and 2 extra brushes. Books began to collect on the windowsill. Framed prints from thrift stores started going up on the walls. I even found a secondhand rug that made the room warmer underfoot. Everything was mismatched, but it was mine. Rachel called to check in around mid-spring. "You're leading the top-performing campaigns this quarter," she said. "If you're open to it, I'd like to make the remote arrangement permanent." We talked about setting up quarterly check-ins at the Hartford office. "No pressure to come back more than you're comfortable with," she added. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and reread one of the campaign reports I'd written. At the bottom, someone on the client side had added a note. Appreciate your clarity, your leadership, and your steady tone. I sat there a long time looking at those words. That weekend, I took the bus across town to meet Dr. Elaine Wilson, a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. The office was quiet with wide windows and soft carpet. We didn't talk about fixing what had happened. We talked about what it meant to stop waiting for people to change. You didn't fail them, she said in one of our early sessions. They failed to show up. You chose to stop being invisible. The more I showed up for my own life, the more space I found. That spring, Tasha mentioned she had a room opening in her apartment. Quieter neighborhood, big kitchen, and best of all, a view of a park from the upstairs windows. Fair warning, she said, giving me the tour. I sing off key in the shower and bake too much when I'm stressed. I moved in on a Saturday morning in early June. Charlotte brought muffins, Will hauled boxes. By noon, we were eating sandwiches on the living room floor while the sun poured in through the bay window. Someone had brought daisies in a jar. My cane sat in the corner like a quiet witness to everything I'd been through. I hung one picture on the wall that day, just one, a print of a wide open road with the words, "Forward is a direction." The rhythm of life settled around me again, but this time it felt steady. Morning coffee with Tasha before she left for school. Quiet work days at the kitchen table. Walks in the park with Charlotte when the light stretched long and golden in the evenings. At my first quarterly visit back to Hartford, Rachel greeted me with a smile and a hug. "You seem different," she said, looking me over, "grounded, like yourself." I thought about that on the drive back to Boston, thought about how I hadn't driven past my parents' neighborhood in almost a year, that this time I didn't feel the need to. I didn't feel that familiar pressure in my chest, the kind that made you brace for disappointment before it arrived. Summer came. I picked up swimming again at a public pool in Cambridge. I had always loved the quiet rhythm of the water, but growing up, we couldn't go often. Hannah said Max got nervous around pools, so my parents told me I needed to find another activity. Now I swam alone early in the mornings when the lanes were empty. I moved slow, steady. My shoulders still twinged on certain strokes, but the water held me up. In early August, Tasha drove me to the hospital for a final round of reconstructive surgery. It was outpatient, but I needed someone to drive me home. She waited in the lobby the whole time, brought me soup that night, stayed on the couch just in case. "This is what people do," she said when I tried to thank her, "when they care." Fall arrived with crisp mornings and the smell of leaves in the air. Rachel called with news that one of our top clients had requested me personally to lead their next campaign. "It means managing a small team," she said. "Are you up for it?" I was. We onboarded 5 junior staffers. I made space for their ideas, their schedules, their voices. And in one of our first check-ins, one of them said, "I've never felt this respected at work before." I wrote it down in my notebook that night. At the 1-year mark since the accident, I got an email from Hannah. The subject line said, "Maybe it's time to come home." The message was short. "Mom and Dad are heartbroken. Apollo isn't doing well. Everyone misses you. Please think about coming back." There was no question about how I was doing, no acknowledgement of anything I'd been through, only a list of how my absence had affected them. I replied with 6 words. "I am home. Please respect my boundaries." That weekend, Charlotte suggested we go to Cape Cod. We rented a small place near the shore, just enough space for 5 of us to crowd in and share grocery runs and lazy breakfasts. The morning of our last day, I stood out on the beach with bare feet in the cold sand. The sky was streaked in orange and soft blue. The water moved quiet and wide in front of us. Tasha handed me a cup of coffee. Charlotte raised hers in a small toast. To Caroline, she said, Who taught all of us what real strength looks like? I didn't answer right away, just stood there letting the wind settle around my shoulders. After we got back from Cape Cod, I started looking ahead in a way I hadn't before. Not just recovering, not just surviving, but actually shaping what came next. I signed up for a regional marketing conference in Chicago. It was the biggest in our field and the first time I'd considered putting myself out there beyond Zoom calls and internal presentations. Rachel encouraged it. "You're ready," she said. "Your name carries weight now. Go show them why." I booked the flight and reserved a room at the Marriott where the conference would be held. I didn't tell many people I was going. Just my team at work, Tasha and Charlotte. There was one thing I kept to myself. My parents lived 2 hours from Chicago. I hadn't spoken to them since the email from Hannah. I hadn't given them my new address, my phone number, or anything else they could use to find me. But if they followed industry news or kept up with my name through the company website, they might know I'd be speaking. I told myself it was unlikely. I told myself I was ready either way. The day of the event, I put on a navy suit and simple heels. Nothing flashy, just enough to feel like I belonged on that stage. I went over my notes once more, clipped my name badge to my jacket, and headed downstairs. The conference center buzzed with energy people laughing, shaking hands, swapping business cards between rows of booths and banners. I waited backstage until my session was called. When they introduced me, I walked out to soft applause and the rustling sound of people settling in. My eyes scanned the room automatically, and then stopped. 3rd row, center section. My parents. They looked older, smaller than I remembered. My mother had a scarf looped around her neck. My father's hair had gone completely gray. They weren't smiling, just watching. I don't remember the first few sentences of my talk. I know I started. I know my voice held steady. By the second slide, I'd found my rhythm. I moved through the data, the strategy, the story behind the campaign. I even heard someone laugh at one of the lines I'd practiced. When it ended, people clapped. I answered a few questions, handed out a couple cards, and accepted a compliment from a man in a tailored blazer who asked to follow up next week. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my parents standing off to the side. I looked away. They were gone by the time I finished the last conversation. That evening, I walked into the hotel restaurant and saw them sitting at a small table by the window. They stood when they saw me. "Caroline," my father said, raising his hand slightly. I paused, then walked over. "Hello," I said. "You were incredible," my mother said, her voice just above a whisper. "We're so proud of you." My father gestured to the open seat. "Would you have dinner with us?" I thought about walking away. I really did. But something in me said I needed to see this through. "I have 30 minutes, I said, pulling out the chair. They looked thinner, tired, as if they hadn't slept well in months. The waiter came and we ordered quickly. When he left, silence settled in. My father cleared his throat. "We wanted to apologize for what I asked." He glanced at my mother, for everything she said, for choosing wrong, for not showing up when it mattered. "You chose a dog walk over a hospital bed," I said. Neither of them spoke. "We didn't understand how bad it was," my father said after a moment. "You were told I might not survive the night." He looked down. The server brought our meals. None of us touched the plates. My mother spoke again. "This past year has been difficult. Jessica hasn't made it easier. She still insists Max is—" I raised a hand. "I'm not here to talk about Max," I said, "or Jessica, or the life you built around pretending I didn't matter." They both nodded. "We just miss you," my mother said quietly. I didn't answer right away. Then I asked, "How did you even know I was here, Maya?" my father said. "We ran into her at a grocery store. She mentioned the conference. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the room. Jessica. She was standing at the entrance with Max on a leash. He was wearing the same therapy dog vest I'd seen him wear in the hospital. I knew it, she said loud enough for half the restaurant to turn. Secret family dinner without me. You promised we'd approach her together. My parents looked around nervously. Jessica, lower your voice, my father said. I waited in the car for 2 hours. Max is exhausted. I stood. She stormed over, eyes wide with frustration. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Max has stress-induced hair loss because of you. She reached out and grabbed my arm. I stepped back. Calmly, steadily. This is exactly why I left, I said. Jessica blinked. You're not upset about what happened to me. You're upset because I stopped playing the role you assigned me, and you're more worried about your dog's fur than the fact that I almost died and had to recover alone. She shook her head. You're being dramatic. I turned to my parents. If you want any kind of relationship with me, here's what I need. Respect my boundaries. Acknowledge the harm. And no more prioritizing a dog over your daughter. Jessica scoffed. You can't set conditions on family. I looked at her. Yes, I can. Then I looked at my parents. I'm staying at this hotel through Thursday. If you want to have a real conversation, you know where to find me. But I'm not going to chase this anymore. I placed a few bills on the table, enough to cover my untouched meal, and walked out. I didn't look back. Back in my room, I called Charlotte. How did it go? She asked. I set the boundary, I said, and I meant it. The next morning, I dove into conference sessions. I made connections with firms in other cities, collected business cards, took notes on breakout panels. That night, as I returned to my room, the front desk handed me an envelope. This came for you earlier, the clerk said. Inside was a small folded note. We're staying at the Holiday Inn down the street. Just us. No Jessica, no Max. If you're willing, we'd like to talk. Text this number if you can meet. Mom and Dad. I sat on the bed for a while holding the paper. Then I picked up my phone. I texted the number on the note just after 8 the next morning. I can meet this afternoon. 1 hour. No repeats of yesterday. The reply came quickly. Understood. There's a cafe around the corner from the convention center. 2:30. We'll be there. At 2:27, I stepped into the quiet little coffee shop. It smelled like cinnamon and fresh espresso. I spotted them in a back booth. No dog, no sister. They stood when they saw me. My father looked nervous. My mother had her hands wrapped around a mug, fingers twisting slightly as I approached. I slid into the booth across from them. Thank you for agreeing to meet, my father said. I want to be clear about something before we start, I said. I'm not here to pretend the past didn't happen. I'm not here for closure on your terms. I'm here because I need to say a few things and I want to see if you're finally ready to hear them. They nodded. I've spent most of my life trying to be seen, I said, trying to be enough. And every time I reached for your approval, I was reminded, some louder than others, that I didn't rank very high. Not compared to Hannah, and definitely not compared to Max. My mother's eyes welled up, but she didn't interrupt. In that hospital bed, I was still hoping you'd come. Even then. And when you didn't, something inside me finally stopped waiting. My father cleared his throat. We made terrible choices. We know that now. After you disappeared, everything fell apart. We had to take a long look at how we got here. We started therapy, my mother added quietly. Both of us, separately and together. It was long overdue. I sat still watching them. They didn't seem defensive, just tired, a different kind of tired than before. What about Hannah? I asked. My mother looked down at her hands. She doesn't think anything is wrong. She said we were weak for even questioning how we raised you both. She's living on her own now. We don't see her much. That caught me off guard. We tried to include her in counseling, my father said, but she walked out, told us we were turning against her. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch a little. I'm not asking you to fix the past, I said, but if there's going to be any contact going forward, it has to look completely different. Phone calls, not surprise visits, no Max, no conversations about Hannah unless I ask. And if any of the old patterns show up again, I walk away for good. My mother nodded. We understand. We want to do better. I need time, I added, to trust it, not just hear it. We'll take what you're willing to give, my father said. That's more than we deserve. She reached into her bag and handed me a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. I found some things I thought you might want. Photos from school, from graduation. I didn't even know we still had them. I held the package but didn't open it. I'll think about it, I said. We stood. No hugs, just a simple, quiet understanding. They didn't follow me out. Back in my room, I unwrapped the paper. Inside were photographs I hadn't seen in years. Me at the edge of a swimming pool with a medal around my neck. A blurry snapshot of me in my cap and gown, standing alone under a cloudy sky. A program from a choir performance I'd assumed no one had attended. I sat for a long time just looking. That Thursday, I flew back to Boston. When I stepped through the door of the apartment, Charlotte had left a sticky note on the counter. Dinner's in the fridge. Congrats on surviving the week. Let me know if you want to talk or just sit quietly and not talk at all. I smiled and opened the fridge. Tasha came home not long after. We sat on the couch with plates on our laps, watching the streetlights flicker on across the park. Did you see them? She asked. I did, I said. Twice. She nodded, didn't press. They're trying, I added. I'm not sure what it means yet, but it felt different. The next morning I went for a swim. The water felt cold at first, sharp, but as I moved through it, I could feel my muscles remembering what to do. I stayed in the slow lane, no rush, just one stroke at a time. Back at home, I unpacked the rest of my suitcase and tucked the photos into the drawer beside my bed. A few weeks after I returned from Chicago, a small stack of yellow slips appeared in my mailbox, missed package notices from my old apartment building. The forwarding labels showed my parents' handwriting. My former landlord, who knew the situation, had refused delivery and redirected the boxes to the courier's holding office. I didn't pick them up. Instead, I called Dr. Wilson and explained what was happening. Would opening them help your healing? She asked. No, I said. Then let them be returned, she replied. That weekend, I took a long walk through the park near our apartment. The trees had just begun to change. I passed families with strollers, couples on benches, kids climbing too high. I paused at the far edge of the trail and looked up at the orange-tipped leaves. I didn't feel unsettled or angry, just steady. That same day, I received a call from the Boston police. We're closing a missing persons report filed by your parents, the officer explained. They filed it months ago, but we've confirmed you're safe and in contact with your employer. No further action will be taken. They knew where I was, I said quietly. I understand, the officer said. It's not uncommon in estrangement cases. We just needed to verify you're okay. After that, I reached out to a local attorney, Kathleen Barnes, who specialized in family law. She met me in her office the following week. If they escalate calls, surprise visits, anything that disrupts your life, you document everything she said. We'll establish boundaries with legal backing if needed. I left her office feeling more protected than I had in years. With the fall came new energy at work. One of our top clients requested me personally to lead their next campaign, a national rollout with a small team under my direction. I spent the better part of a week building the project brief. When I introduced the campaign plan to the team, their focus reminded me of how far I'd come. 2 months in, Rachel pulled me aside during a check-in. "Your team has the highest satisfaction score in the company," she said. "They feel seen, they feel heard." I didn't say much in response. I just nodded, made a note, and returned to my work. But that evening I sat on my bed with the lights off, thinking about how different that was from where I started. Later that night, I opened my journal and wrote just one sentence: I lead the way I needed to be led. In March, I scheduled my final reconstructive surgery. It wasn't major, but it required a full day of monitoring afterward. Tasha took a personal day, drove me to the clinic, and sat in the recovery room until I woke up. She had a crossword puzzle in her lap and a water bottle balanced on the edge of her chair. "How do you feel?" she asked as I blinked through the anesthesia haze. "Sore," I said. "We'll get you home," she said, "and I'll make that rice soup you like." That night she stayed on the couch with a blanket and a book in case I needed help getting up. Around 3 a.m., I couldn't sleep and shuffled out of my room. She looked up. "Want to sit?" I nodded and eased into the other end of the couch. We sat in the dark, listening to the radiator click. "This is what family is supposed to feel like," she said. "Not complicated, just present." I didn't answer, but I stayed there until the sun came up. By late spring, I was walking comfortably without the cane, just a slight stiffness in my right side now and then. I started going to the pool more regularly. Mornings became my favorite time. Quiet lanes, calm water. I swam in sets of 200 yards, then sat by the edge and let my muscles rest. The final marker came that summer. My team's campaign outperformed projections. The client sent a letter of appreciation, naming me directly. I received a bonus large enough to pay down 1/3 of my remaining student loans. We celebrated with takeout on the apartment balcony. Charlotte brought cupcakes. Tasha lit a candle for no reason. At the end of the evening, I stepped back inside to check my email. There was a message from Hannah. Subject line, "Come home." "Apollo still cries at night. Mom and Dad are miserable. You're being cruel. Just come back already." I stared at it for a long time, then replied, "I am home. Please don't contact me again." I blocked the address. That weekend, we drove to a lakeside cabin for 2 days. No agenda, just books, walks, and breakfast cooked slowly on a stovetop that leaned slightly to one side. I stood on the dock the first morning with my coffee and watched the mist roll across the water. The quiet wrapped around me like a warm coat. The lake was still that morning, flat as glass, with a soft mist curling over the surface. I stood at the edge of the dock, coffee warming my hands, and let the quiet settle over me. No thoughts of work, no buzzing phone, no weight from the past tugging at my shoulders, just breath and water and peace. Inside, I could hear the slow creak of floorboards as Charlotte started breakfast. Tasha was probably still asleep, her usual Saturday routine. It struck me then, not all at once, but gradually, that this was the life I had once thought impossible. Not flashy, not perfect, but mine, honest, real. A year ago, I woke up in a hospital, unable to move, wondering if anyone would show up, wondering if nearly dying would finally be enough to make them care. Now I didn't wonder. I didn't wait. The people who showed up were the ones who stayed. Charlotte with her stubborn kindness and grocery bags, Tasha with her off-key singing and steady loyalty, Rachel who trusted me to lead, Andrea who reminded me to swim forward, Dr. Wilson who helped me stop apologizing for being the one left out, and me finally showing up for myself. I still get occasional emails from old friends who heard bits and pieces. Once in a while, a coworker asks if I've made up with my family. I always give the same answer: I'm building something better now. It's not about going back. It's about going home on my own terms. The physical scars have faded, but I can still feel them when the weather changes. I've learned to listen to what my body tells me. The same way I've learned to listen to my boundaries to the part of me that knows the difference between obligation and love. My parents and I keep a careful distance. A few phone calls a year, a holiday card. They've respected the limits I set. Sometimes I hear hesitation in their voices. Sometimes they try to reach for something that used to be there. But I don't fill the silence for them anymore. I let the space stay open. That in itself is healing. I've kept one photo on my dresser. It's from the swimming meet my parents missed. I'm standing near the edge of the pool, soaking wet, grinning like I don't need anyone to notice. And maybe back then I really didn't. Maybe part of me always knew I'd have to learn to clap for myself. Somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to prove I was worth loving. And I started living like I already was. That's the lesson I carry now. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they know how to hold your heart. And just because someone failed to love you the way you needed doesn't mean you weren't lovable. It just means they didn't know how. But there are people who do. You find them in unexpected places at doorsteps, with houseplants in late-night soup pots, in quiet chairs beside hospital beds. People who don't need you to earn your place at the table. People who show up because that's just who they are. Family isn't who shows up in photos. It's who shows up when it matters. If this story reminds you of your own path or of someone you had to let go to find peace, I hope you'll share it. And if you're still walking through your own healing, know this: you're not alone and you're not behind. You're just on the road home. Thank you for listening, and take good care of yourself. You deserve it.